I'm already feeling challenged because I doubt if I'll be half as good, but okay, God gives us different graces.
We talked about comparison.
With other couples, no. So. Okay, so my topic for today is, okay, this is the main theme of the seminar, once more. Rekindle the fire, and the subtopic is keeping the yes alive. So to me, when I read this topic, or when I look at this topic, the first thing that comes to my mind is the 13th of July, right?
Yes. 13th of July, yes. 2014.
The 13th of July 2014, when both of us, a few blocks from here, I think I've already said something like that, when we gave each other the commitment to spend the rest of our lives together. And within this time, or even much before, we've been through a couple of things. And today I just want to share to you what I understand by two becoming one. And it's, for me, in the first place, partnership. Mommy Laura, can you come please? Okay, thank you. So, I just want to do a short demonstration. Sorry. So most of us who went to primary and secondary school in Cameroon will remember 11th February and 20th of May, when we are celebrating Youth Day or National Day. And it's always something like, we always begin with the march past, right? And Mommy Laura, come on, left, right, left, right. So, the important thing of this exercise is you are keeping, while you're marching straight, but you always have to keep an eye on the left and on the right, so that those who are on the same line with you, it's okay, we are still practicing. So that those who are on the same line with you, so that you always maintain, you're always on the same line, right? And even when you're bending, so something like this. So we say, no, you don't go.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So you're doing something like this, okay, right? Then they say forward, march, left, right, left, right, left, right. Then now, left, turn, left. So the person on this side, she stands and waits. And then now when we're on the same line, then we continue forward, right? Thank you very much, Laura. So, this is a short, for me, it's a short demonstration of what partnership should be. So, in this exercise, while marching, you always have each other in sight, right? And you communicate with each other. If you discover that your partner is one step ahead or so, you do something like this, right? And then you get back to motion. So this is, what I'm talking about today is, I'm going to talk about resources, finances, and plans. This is where it becomes really tricky for most relationships. This is where it is fixed, and this is where it breaks. This is where resentments arise. But before we get into that, I want us to first of all look at what marriage is. What is really marriage? A wedding. From the wedding, as she said already, it's a wonderful experience, a wonderful day of your marriage, of your wedding. But at the end of the day, whether it's a wedding or ordination to the priesthood, you celebrate with so very many people. But at the end of the day, latest 11 o'clock in the night after all the partying is done, you are left with this one person whom you've called the whole day, sweetie, honey, angel, and whatever, right? And the moment you get behind your door and shut the door, maybe from that very evening, you start thinking, you start discovering, wait a minute, this is the opposite of an angel I got. Right? Because it begins from there. So, what comes to your mind? We just witnessed the wedding of Prince Harry, right? And Meghan. Very beautiful wedding. So, when you look at this wedding, you see a very beautifully dressed lady, bridesmaid, flower girls, ring bearer, and all that, and well-decorated church. And everybody is smiling, happy. That's how marriage should be, not just on that day, but every day. And it becomes a real challenge, right? So, what happens? Now, we get to our belongings. So, we reflect on our years today. The thing is, when I look at that day, from the planning and all the stress, finance is involved. At the end of the day, there's some weddings or some couples where you spend so much for a wedding that on the very next day, you already start arguing because there is no means to continue after that. And that is when, for me, I think we have to come together and put our minds, right? So, if I have to define marriage, this is what I would say. Marriage is an intimate and complementing union between a man and a woman. Let's not get the definition wrong, because some people are trying to help us redefine marriage. I mentioned something like that already for the rest of their life. If we read Matthew 19, verse 9, we hear the Pharisees asking Jesus the question, is it right or lawful for a man to divorce his wife? For the topic, and Jesus goes away to explain to them what God meant marriage to be, right? From the onset, it's supposed to be between one man and one woman for life. But God gave Moses the right to accept that you can divorce because of your hard-heartedness. So the next thing I will say is marriage was instituted by God. Right? And we can get that from Genesis 2, verses 23 to 24. I think out of time constraint, I'm just going to flip through. But we have these verses we can always refer. Of it, you always hear something like this in whatever form. There is always this statement between where the couples, I think in our case, I had to say something like, I, Paul Tinzoh, take you, Laura Ngaba, as my wife. I promise, right? Till death do us part. That's what we say. And what is this? This formula, what is it exactly? It is what makes marriage what it is. So we are going to look at the difference between marriage and some other contracts. We always make the mistake to think marriage is a contract. And that's a very, very deadly mistake, because if you look at marriage as a contract, it could be compared to looking at your wife as a prostitute. And that's why I say it becomes deadly, because the end of the day might not meet you. So, then from Genesis, we understand then that marriage is supposed to be a monogamous relationship. That's what God planned from the onset. It's supposed to be between one man and one woman, right? Till death do us part. This brings us to what the Germans will call Fremdgehen. right? Once I give that commitment to one person, it remains between the two of us, and there is no looking left, right, forward or backward, but it is always centered and concentrated on one person. So much so that if I'm asking you, what is marriage? For me, marriage has a name, Laura. Right? And in this union, the husband and the wife are equal before God. And I think it should also be before man, right? They are equal. She talked of partnership. And there is this formula. I think I had at this point in mind to play a song, but I'll just keep it out because of time. So in this partnership, we have two equal men rights and maybe obligations, right? And the union must reflect the image of God. When we look at the Godhead, we have three people, right? And we always say co-equal with the Father. Christ is co-equal with the Father. And when we read, I don't have it here, but when we read John chapter 2 at the wedding feast of Canaan, there is a passage that always results to a couple of arguments when Jesus calls his mother woman. And we don't understand exactly why, but it kind of underlines this equality. That's a euphemism which Christ uses, which doesn't signify any form of disrespect, but signifies equality. Okay. The husband, okay, she said that already, is the loving head and the wife is a helper. We can read this in 1 Corinthians, in 1 Timothy, in Ephesians, Colossians, and Peter. So you can imagine how important it is that we have so much document on it. And the relationship is fruitful. It depends on what God gives. Some people don't have any. This shouldn't become a source of grievances or a source of problem, but we can only take it back to the source. Now, I always said when we recite that formula, I take you as my wife or my husband, we are actually swearing an oath, right? We are swearing an oath. And when you swear an oath, you call upon God's name because you can't do it yourself. That's what we call on God's name. So help me God. And that makes it a covenant. And therefore, I'm trying to get some differences here between marriage, which is a covenant, and your Vodafone Vertrag, for instance, or your house Vertrag, or your car contract. And the first is the contract builds on agreements attached to demands. So it's